Hey everyone, welcome to today's video. I wanted to share 10 ways that you can support somebody who is rewiring or retraining their brain. And I made this video just for the friends, family, and loved ones of those of us who are healing through neuroplasticity programs. So let's get started. All right, so there is a good amount of information out there on the internet these days about neuroplasticity and its role in healing chronic illness, which I think is so great. But when I looked around, I couldn't find a lot of resources that are made for the friends, family members, loved ones, caregivers of those of us who are doing these programs. So that's why I wanted to make this video. I also made a blog version of this a few months ago, which I will link below if you'd rather read it. But this is going to be about ways that you can support us through this rewiring process, because it is a little bit different than a lot of other healing modalities. So these are my 10 tips for how to support somebody who is rewiring their brain. So the first one is probably the most important, at least to me, is don't rush us. This is so important that we don't feel rushed or pressured throughout this rewiring process. Trust me, we are doing the best that we can. We want this process to go faster too, but there's only so much that we can do to make that happen. But the pressure or the timeline to hurry up and speed up our healing only makes us more stressed out. So if you can, practice your patience, give us that space, and know that we're doing everything that we can to heal in as short of time as we can. Number 2 is learn the lingo. So within a lot of brain retraining programs, particularly DNRS, there are words and phrases that we don't use, that we replace them with other things. There's also phrases that we just use day to day, probably without thinking about it because it's within the program. So really learning the lingo, learning the words and phrases that we use to talk about our condition, like LSI, a limbic system impairment, talking about limby or limbic system, things like ITS or POPs. All of these things are part of the lingo, so it really helps to be able to speak the same language, or at least not have you glaze over when we use these words in our day-to-day life. Number 3 is about prioritizing safety and calm. So this is a really key component to any rewiring process, any healing process really in general, is about creating safety and calm in the nervous system. So I often bring in wisdom from the polyvagal theory here, which I highly recommend you look into. It's applicable to everybody, not just those of us with chronic illness. So doing your best to create cues of safety and calm in the environment, as well as within your interactions with that person. Anything that can help teach their nervous system that it's okay, that we are safe, that we can be here. That's going to be really helpful. So number 4 is don't judge based on appearance. So this is one of the, I would say, double-edged swords for any of us with chronic invisible illnesses like limbic system impairment. It often isn't easy to tell. So even through my nearly 13 years of chronic health issues, I have looked pretty normal the whole time. Most people assume that I feel good, especially if I have bothered to do my hair and makeup that day. So this is very true for a lot of us with limbic system issues who are going through retraining. We may look totally fine, but we may be really suffering with a lot of symptoms that day. Just like, it can be the opposite as well. So really try not to look at the way that we present physically and assume that has anything to do with how we're feeling. This is particularly important because a part of neuroplasticity programs, particularly DNRS, we are taught to act greater than we feel. So we may be acting happy, we may be acting joyful and active and courageous and all these things, but really be feeling a lot of discomfort on the inside. So really try to keep that in mind. Number 5, don't be offended by our need for distraction. So this is something that has taken me quite a long time to figure out. Actually, it took probably a whole year into my DNRS journey before I realized that like my brain was so used to high levels of stimulation. It still is. But in the past, it had been negative stimulation all the time. So my brain was used to feeling a certain amount of fullness. So now, as part of my retraining, I have to figure out how to have a similar amount of fullness, but with more positive inputs. So this a lot of times requires some distraction. Things that we may look down on others for, like being on our phones a lot or watching a lot of videos or always having our headphones in, listening to music or podcasts or something that is going to distract us from symptoms and old patterns. So please don't be offended if we need to be stimulated more than you think that we should or more than would be convenient. We're just doing our best to give our brains more input because a lot of the times being completely quiet or totally not stimulated can be triggering for those kind of old pathways and old symptom patterns. So number 6 is help us to refocus. This is something that we are all doing ourselves day to day, trying to pull our brains out of these old ruts and creating new pathways that are healthy and supportive. But it takes time and it takes a lot of practice and a lot of effort. So you can help us do that by, encouraging us and supporting us into maybe reframing negative thoughts, or if you catch us going through an old loop or a behavior pattern that is related to our illness or limiting, beliefs, you can very gently, compassionately help us to refocus. There are lots of ways to do this, and I want you to find what works for you within your particular relationship, and doing it with, that patience and compassion to help us to stay on track. Number 7 is don't muddy the waters. So many people, especially if they find out that, that somebody they love has a chronic health condition, will just throw out a whole bunch of unsolicited advice. And again, I know it's well-meaning. I know you just want to help us maybe find healing. But when we're going through a rewiring program, it really helps us to maintain focus if we're not being thrown a whole bunch of other ideas. So even if you heard from somebody somewhere that this other thing helped them, or, so-and-so healed on this medication or this diet or whatever, we encourage you to, if you can, not throw that at us right now. Let us stay focused on the rewiring process. And because otherwise we can get confused, get doubtful, and that is not useful. So don't muddy the waters for us. Number 8 is ride the cycles and waves with us. So like any healing journey, it is not linear with neuroplasticity. There are going to be days or weeks where we're feeling better, doing more, feeling more hopeful and active, and then there will be seasons where we are in what most of us call an ebb. And these ebbs and flows of recovery. So it's really important that you are able to ride those cycles and waves with us. Don't get too disappointed when we go into an ebb. Just allow that natural unfolding, that natural progression of our healing to happen. Number 9 is honor the personal process. Although programs like Gupta and DNRS are pretty structured in the way that they are, they are done by lots and lots of different people with different backgrounds, different conditions, different things in their past, different traumas, different everything. So it really truly is a very personal process for a lot of us. And rewiring requires us to dig deep and to really confront a lot of these personal patterns, our own limiting beliefs, all these ways that we have, been in this kind of illness mindset, all these things. It's very personal. And part of that is kind of peeling back the layers of the onion with our own, childhood experiences even, and past traumas. So understand that this is a personal process and our results will be different person to person. So it's important not to compare us to somebody else or put that thought in our mind to compare ourselves to somebody else, but allowing for that pretty deep and sometimes kind of intense and difficult transformation to happen. Number 10 is a really important one. We want you to take care of yourselves too. If you are supporting somebody who is very sick or somebody who is doing a lot of healing work, it can be easy to forget about yourself or overgive or get what's called compassion fatigue and all of these things and forget about your own life. But we really want you to take care of yourselves too. So prioritize your own rest, your own self-care, the things that bring you joy in life, because that will ultimately help us as well. And just for fun, a bonus tip, I encourage you to embrace the silly and weird. There is a lot of silliness and a lot of weirdness in these types of programs. Things like laughter yoga or singing silly childhood songs or playing games. All these things we are taught to use as ways to work with our brain, work with our limbic system, as well as rewire our brains for joy, for laughter. So it could get silly and weird at times, so just embrace it. So I hope this was helpful. 10 plus an extra tip for how to support your loved ones, support the people you know who are rewiring or retraining their brain. If there are any other tips you want me to add, or if you are a fellow retrainer and want to leave your tips below, please leave a comment. I would love to share those. And hopefully this was helpful for you. And yeah, happy retraining to those of us who are doing that. And thank you again from the bottom of our hearts to all of our friends and loved ones and family members who are supporting us along the way. We couldn't do it without you. So thanks for watching and stay tuned for the next video. Take care. Bye.